to me, the big arguments of our time on liberty, on tyranny, on theocratic extremism, there are far more people in my political neck of the woods on the left who are awful on that, absolutely awful, and who in a strange way are betraying. And there's terrible heritage on the left.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely grotesque heritage on the left. But there are some good things on it, which used to be a respect for science, however perverted, some kind of at least acknowledgement of women's rights, some kind of secularism, or indeed atheism. In the liberal left-wing tradition, everyone now says, Labour Party owes more to Methodism than Marx, and I'm sure that's true, and non-conformists inspired the Liberal Party, I'm sure that's true too, but the fight against religious power was a fight that, on the whole, people who saw themselves as liberal or left-wing were fighting against people who saw themselves as conservatives, as protecting the Anglican status quo in England and Wales, for instance. And now, in my political neck of the woods, certainly among middle-class leftists, we are now in the extraordinary position where if I were to pick any newspaper from any European country and show it to you, and there would be a defence of a movement which wants to subjugate women, kill all the Jews, kill all the homosexuals, kill any Muslim who of his or her own free will decides to change their religion, establish a dictatorship, and maybe even, as we see now, if ISIS genocidal dictatorship, and say, well, look, ladies and gentlemen, is this a left-wing newspaper or a right-wing newspaper?
There's something which we have become accustomed to, which is passive liberalism. In that, if I'm the person, I will tolerate whatever you do, and then delude myself into thinking I'm a liberal because I'm tolerating whatever you're doing. And what's happened in the politics of identity that have played out in this country and across Europe, because you don't get, frankly, up to 3,000 European-born and raised citizens going to join the worst terrorist group that history has ever witnessed, unless you have a problem. Right? So what's happened as a result of that passive liberalism is this complete, what's called tolerance is actually capitulation. This complete tolerance of everything and anything, even the most illiberal form of theocratic fascism, in the name of multiculturalism, has allowed for that form of theocratic fascism to thrive. But the abject nature of that, the selfishness of it, and the short-sightedness of it is because it doesn't affect primarily, until terrorism, of course, spills over and bombs start going off, it hadn't, throughout the 90s, affected anyone except within the minority community. The first victims of that form of theocratic fascism were what I have come to call the minorities within the minorities. Right? So you're thinking of, you mentioned that the dissident Muslims, the feminist Muslims, the ex-Muslims, the gay Muslims, the liberal Muslims, anyone who wants to speak out against the status quo, and any of you here who are from the gay community will know that actually it's very difficult for Muslims to come out. It's very difficult. So they are the first victims of this atmosphere that was allowed. It was actually encouraged. I don't want to even say allowed. It was actively encouraged throughout the 90s in this country within minority communities. And so it thrived. And what ended up happening is we ended up with a situation where we had a mini caliphate in the United Kingdom before we had the caliphate that ISIS declared. I've often said is no idea is above scrutiny, and no people are beneath dignity. So anti-Muslim hate, targeted hate, is bigotry and is already illegal. Yeah, but to say I want to ban Islamophobia, in other words, criticism of any religion, is in effect introducing a blasphemy law through the back door. And when you do
a blasphemy law
through the front door
with a death penalty.
Yeah, and so when you do that, what you really end up doing is you're saying that those minorities within minority communities, meaning the feminist Muslims, the dissident, the liberal Muslims, the gay Muslims, we're selling them. We're selling them out. We are abandoning them.
Because you're going along with the most conservative.
Yeah, And
yeah, you're saying that is Islam.
that's Islam.
Yeah, the most conservative interpretation.
If you really care about social justice and you care about those minority communities, then then their liberation, which comes through liberty, through their allowing them to express themselves, is what really matters, and this is why I'm in this.
But also, I mean, looking from the wide point of view, is that it's how hypocritical conventional pieties can be, or how useful conventional pieties can be. Because if you're a middle-class family in Queen's Park, upper middle-class family in Queen's Park, you've got sons, you've got daughters, you may not think like this, but it's no problem for you. I mean, you have to go along with some PC nonsense, but it's no problem for you if Muslims on the council estate in Queen's Park, their daughters being ripped out of school, are married off, not going to compete for your daughter's university place. If their sons are going to be told you can't learn about Darwin and can't get a science job, there's an element of this. There's an element of multiculturalism which is indifference, and there's an element of multiculturalism which actually suits the status quo quite well. As you said, it's a bit like colonialism. We'll carry on as we've always carried on. We'll carry on governing. But we'll leave the natives and their superstitions alone. Don't interfere with those Carruthers, I mean, nothing but trouble, the old colonel found out. I mean, there is an element of that in it. Let's not get involved in this. We don't want to get involved in this, and so you turn your back on your comrades. You say you're a feminist, you say you're a liberal, you say you're a socialist, but then when people in minority communities, and it's not just Islam, it's Hinduism, it's Orthodox Judaism, you can go through, people in minority communities who want to be socialists or feminists or liberals turn to you for their support, and you actually say, it's racist for me to support you. It's insensitive for me to support you. So you make a nonsense of your own beliefs. The state is trying to ban Islamist speakers from universities who are misogynist, anti-Semitic, homophobic, racist, all the rest of it, anti-democratic, anti-human rights, but on that actually supporting violence, which crosses the great liberal line. The liberal line, going back to John Stuart Mill, has always been you must have free speech unless you're inciting violence against another. But, I mean, the government can say, well, universities and the NUS do this the whole time. But the real point is this, and the real problem is this, is if you, or for old people in this room, your child was to go to university and support UKIP, they'd have a hell of a time. If you or your child were to go to university and say abortion is murder, they would have a hell of a time. They'd be challenged, they'd be argued with, they'll be unfashionable, no comedian they listen to, no pop artist whose music they play, no one they met in a students' union would support them. The cult culture, which is far more effective than law, they'll be met with an anti-abortion culture, a pro-abortion culture, an anti-racist culture, and certainly if you go to university, hi, I want to set up, Oxford University Women's BNP group, they're probably thrown out, but I mean, they've certainly met an anti-fascist culture. And yet, this is why we have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of British citizens, European citizens, ending up with, you can't commit, you shouldn't throw these words around, but, I'm quite happy to sometimes. I mean, when you look at it all, the fascism of our times, which does not say it was the fascism of our parents or grandparents' time, but the fascism of our times.
Actually, the solution to this, I don't think, is governmental. I think the solution to this, analogous with the anti-racism struggle, with the anti-homophobia struggle, with the anti-Semitism struggle, is a civil society-led drive, which is a culture.
And really, the government's got nothing to contribute.
No, that's not what I said. I said primarily, first and foremost, it's a civil society solution. There are stuff. I'll come to the government bit in a second, but this is primarily, first and foremost, a civil society-led struggle. Society can do a lot to change the conversation around some of this. So like with anti-racism, what I said on Question Time, we never would have imagined when I was 15 years old, if you come to me in Essex and said that when you're 37, Maajid, There will be one of the most well-known rappers will be white, Eminem. The president of America will be black, and a conservative prime minister, because I grew up under Thatcher. A conservative prime minister will introduce gay marriage equality. Right? I never would have, but that's how civil society has changed some of these debates, and I think it can do the same with this extremism debate.